we're going to finish off the sessions really with ideas of, you can see where this is going. You can see that whether it's the way Tottington did it or whether it's just philosophical, you can kind of see that this is all built on the idea of having core values and having a context that everybody understands, and that this is non-negotiable. And I don't mean that by putting it in a policy. I think, like Nicola was discussing policies before, they can be the death of creativity almost, but you have to revisit them if you're going to reshape things. We talked about, the whole title of this is about innovative culture, and how you have to grow your own. We've talked about that growing, but you won't get innovation, because let's be honest, you can have great ideas as leaders, but the innovation will happen when teachers run with it and run a million miles. So this session 3 is called Wrap Me in Bubble Wrap, Then I Will Take a Risk. Because actually you will not get people to innovate, or children, if you're a teacher, you won't get them to run through these brick walls unless they feel, well, these two things. Firstly, that they feel safe. If your staff don't feel safe, and I don't mean physically safe, I mean, they should feel physically safe. If they don't feel physically safe, we're definitely doing something wrong. I mean emotionally safe. I'm going to talk about what that means and ways to make your staff feel emotionally safe, that they can act with no fear, that there will be no hard hat days like there were in my previous school, and that staff feel valued. You will not get people taking risks and being innovative and running the extra mile unless they feel safe and valued. That is how I think you wrap them in bubble wrap. Let's dig into some of these fears then. Now, I don't know your contexts, I don't know your staff, I don't know you, but what I have come across in 10 years of talking about these things are some key fears that people feel in their daily lives or in the way that schools are set up. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways in which I've dealt with these fears in schools. The first fear, and I put it at the top for a reason, because it isn't about how good you are, it's the perception problem is what I've called it here. And actually, it's that feeling as a leader, as a set of governors, as teachers, how am I perceived in the community? Now, no matter how hard you work inside, internally, looking inward, it doesn't matter much unless you are outward facing with it. You cannot do all these things if you don't have any children to do it with. You can't be amazing in your classrooms if the parents don't have buy-in, if the local community doesn't see the value in the school down the road. So how you are perceived is a massive way to improve the way that the staff feel. Because I've talked about this, about feeling valued, but you have to be perceived positively in your community. Now, that could be the community outside of your classroom, could be within the building, but it could be the wider context. The response, the one that even if you've tried to push it away because you disagree with it, like I do. I'm not a heavy social media user, but I can see its benefits for positive marketing, not because we want more money, not because we just want children in our school, but actually for the well-being effect that being seen positively by others gives your staff. I'm going to give you some examples. My staff won't thank you for this, but actually if you go on to TPS Tube, Tottington Primary School Tube on YouTube, you'll see all these videos of which I've taken screenshots, because we wanted, how many times have I said it? Relentlessly positive, happy, child-focused, all these words that I keep using this afternoon. If we don't portray that outwardly, then it's not believable. And honestly, if you were picking a school that you wanted your child to go to, yes, you want high academic standards. They're a byproduct. I told you that before. But actually, you want the ones that are having fun, don't you? Because do you know what, head teachers, you're not all that. I go to relentless head teacher briefings and I look at the people in the room or on the other side of Zoom, and I think, how on earth do you inspire children to want to achieve? How do you stand in a staff meeting and whip everybody up so that they leave that staff meeting and can't wait to get the teeth in? How? But actually, it's the same for your teachers as well. Some of my teachers are not natural performers. They don't like social media. But actually, if you want our culture and ethos to be embedded, then people need to see it as well as us. I know we believe it. Does everybody? These are clips from a video we put together. It was led by the caretaker, who does a piece to camera and says that there's always music at the start and the end of a day. And he wanted to know what the teachers really get up to when there's nobody around, when the children have gone home. So he says to the YouTube viewers, I've put up some secret cameras and I just want to see what's going on in the classrooms. Now, they're not secret cameras, that's just a filter. We then asked every member of staff, including kitchen staff, to do something ridiculous to music. You can see class 1, 2 there. They're rocking on to some music. There's one of the midday supervisors, one of the cooks. She starts to Queen, doing the Freddie Mercury business with her brush. I said before, do you want to be Leonidas or do you want to be Sergeant Melcher? You can tell that if you're going to ask your staff to do it, you've got to roll up your sleeves, you've got to do it yourself. There's me doing some serious moves in this hidden camera video that we put together. Did it raise standards? Well, not directly. Was it purely so that the children can learn better? Was it a good use of public funding? Well, absolutely, yeah, because what it was 2 minutes of absolute joy, a laugh. We enjoyed putting it together. We had some reticent people, but they did it anyway. And then we put it on social media. 3,000 views later, everybody can just see, oh, that school's having a laugh. And it's just a laugh, the end. But is it? Or does it say something about the culture of that school? Does it say something about what we value? Because what we value is having a laugh and having fun. And if I'm choosing a school for my child, I want the one where they're having a laugh, don't I? Because if the staff are having a laugh, the kid will have a laugh. It's what your social media representations represent. And for me, they had to represent those core values. Here's another one. You may or may not be aware of the concept of flash mobbing, the idea that in a train station in Los Angeles, for example, you could be walking through the train station and all of a sudden dancers all over the shop pop up to music and start doing different things. You'll have seen it on Times Square. You'll have seen it in Grand Central Station. I've seen it down in London. Could you do it in a primary school? Of course you can. You get all your staff in the morning like they normally would do to walk out and mingle with the parents and the children at the start of the day. 700 people on the yards, 50 staff coming out to just mingle. Well, they're not just mingling. They're going to a certain spot in the playground. And when the music comes on, they're going to start dancing all in time because we've had choreography lessons from a dance teacher in the evenings when nobody knew. And we start dancing and slowly we all come together at the front and we all do the same moves and we do a dance routine that lasts 4 minutes to a community that just thought they were dropping the children off and had no idea. David talked about Simon Hunt. Yes, he did the worm all the way across the yard as part of the choreography. There he is, if you can see. It looks like he's doing press-ups. You can obviously see that one child in the front, absolutely overwhelmed with it. I think he's just on his he's had enough. He's like, oh, God, they're at it again. But you've got to put yourself out there as the place to be. You can do it with social media. You can do it physically, like we did here. Carpool karaoke was huge when James Corden picked that up. And everybody was doing it. Can primary schools do it? Well, of course they can. Mr. Hunt drove his car around. These were in the days when we could all be in a car together. Do you remember those days? But actually, we ended up doing carpool karaoke. There's the Key Stage 1 team doing Bohemian Rhapsody, of course. There's the early years team and the nursery team dancing to a different song. And like I said, in for a penny, in for a pound. We did In the Jungle, the Mighty Jungle together. It's a 2-minute clip. It's an insight into Mr. Hunt's drive to school. He did it with children as well. For GDPR reasons, I couldn't show you those clips. But it's a 2-minute clip called Carpool Karaoke. It's on YouTube. Please go and have a look. We have a laugh. Is it forced with some of the staff? Yeah, it is. We had to do a couple of takes because we're not professionals at this. We have people that didn't really want to do it. But you know that dancing guy that David was referring to from stage 1, from session 1 in this? As soon as a couple of people start doing it, everybody else just cracks on. Not every member of staff was in the early videos because they weren't that type of person. Slowly but surely, the caretaker being a perfect example. He's the grumpiest man on the planet, but on these videos and when he's in front of the children, he's an absolute diamond. And he started fronting these videos because it's part of the culture now. It feels like I'm just trying to promote our TPS tube. I'm not. I'm showing you creative ways innovative ways for people to feel valued. The point of this was me talking about how do you make your staff feel valued. You make sure that the perception of your teachers is an amazing one, because we don't know what the children say about us when they go home at the end of the day. But I know that I can influence some of this through social media and through the playground in the morning. And there's some examples of how we did it. Going back to this fears, in my 10 years of trying to understand what stops people being the best person they can be. The second one is fear of the bad idea. What if my idea fails? What if the policy that I've been asked to write by the head is rubbish? What if the lesson that I do is no good? We come to that later. What if, because I am all that, and I'm the head teacher, and I've got letters after my name, what if that idea doesn't actually work? Well, my response to this would be one of collective responsibility, and that failure is okay. Because failure has to be part of the process in a school. It's easy to be the hard hat head teacher and force people to do things, but actually people won't take risks. We're talking about innovative culture here. That's why you're here this afternoon. People won't innovate, because innovation is when you push an idea and you try something new, and it doesn't always work. But if failure is not part of that process and owned by everybody, nobody will take a risk. You'll always do what you've always done. And when you always do what you've always done, you'll always get the same result. And we're talking about change here. We're talking about improvement. So how do you make failure a part of the process? Sorry, I know you're perfect and I know you've got your own parking space, but you've got to lead by example. You've got to own your mistakes. Honesty, I said, was one of my kind of core values when I came into this, that I wanted people to see. And you've got to be honest. If I'll come on to the idea that actually you should be making a majority of the key decisions. You should be doing it as a team anyway. So there's a collective failure there. It's not about you're no good because you keep failing head. But actually there'll be some things. I've had some absolute crazy ideas and I've pushed them out there, and 6 months later, it's clear that it didn't land right, or it's not working. It isn't making the end goal that I wanted it to do. And I hold my hand up and we have a staff meeting when we say, do you remember that innovation? We're not going to do that anymore. Didn't really work, did it? You might want to dig into why it didn't. You might want to try and find a way to salvage it, but it doesn't really matter. It's about honesty. People will not be happy with failure if the head always gets it right. If you have this hierarchy where the head does everything right and you have to do everything he does or she does, people won't try to be different. And it's that diversity. I mean, if you do get the chance, try and look up Simon Hunt, Mr. Hunt from the front. It helps that if you have innovators in your team, a lot of the ideas that I'm talking about this afternoon are part of a collaboration. It's not just me. It helps if you have key people that think outside the box, but you own these things together. And you lead by example by owning your own mistakes, inadequacies, and bad decisions. Owning your inadequacies sounds like a really big phrase, because this idea that you're supposed to be the all-seeing eye is absolutely false. The success of the schools in which I've worked is down to the fact that I know what I'm not that good at, and I find someone that can do it better than me, and I tell people that. You will be running this project in early years because early years is not my strength, but I trust you and I believe in you to go with this, and I will support you and I will coach you to make sure that it is successful, but it's not my strength, and that's why you're here. Ownership and positive ownership is a big part of what I'll be talking about this afternoon. You'll see it a couple of times, but knowing that you are backed by a leader who owns his own inadequacies, I think is pretty strong. I talked about this just briefly then. The idea that you share accountability to minimize that finger pointing. When we fail together. This is time consuming. Nicola talked about policies before. There are some policies that just need doing. They just need to get sorted and put on the network and everybody can view them, and that's the way it is. But a majority of the policies that matter, teaching and learning, things like that, the way that you're going to be, they need to be done together, so that if an idea doesn't take off particularly well or doesn't bear fruit the way you wanted it to do, it's not one person, well, I knew it was going to fail because she led it, or it was a bad idea, I was never asked my opinion, I knew it would fail. I mean, you know where I'm going with this. If we all make our decisions together and you build that into the cycle of improvement in your school improvement plan and the way that you run your CPD, if you build this as part of the way that you work, you can own the failures together. And you know what? Things don't fail as much because people have had input into it. They've got buy-in. I use that right at the start, buy-in. They bought into it. So they're going to try and work twice as hard to make it succeed. But when it doesn't, you actually share that failure. There's no finger pointing. And actually, you've got to do that for your decisions. People love bringing down the boss. Even if you're the best boss in the world and everybody loves you, there's still something about sticking it to the man, as the Americans would say. There's always something about, oh, yeah, he had an idea. I knew it'd be rubbish. I knew that won't work. But you've got to share your decision-making then, because there's always going to be someone that loves to bring down the boss. So don't allow them to do it. There's been many a times where I've had to stand up and say, that didn't work, did it? Why did we ever think that it would? There's a difference, isn't there, that if everybody's involved in that decision-making process, even if you know, and I talked about accountability before in decision-making at the start, even if you know that ultimately you are the one that has to run that decision, it isn't one that anybody should really have input into, there's nothing wrong with sharing your thought process. Because even if it's an unpopular decision, and they do exist, if you share your thought process and people can see the Stephen Holden mantra, oh, he's done that, I can see, I don't agree with it, but I can see that it's in the best interest of the children, then they still should get buy-in, even if it's an unpopular choice. Not every decision I've had to make has been a positive innovation change. Some things are difficult. Some things are about saving money. Some things are about changing normal ways of working that people were actually comfortable with. But if you can justify it by being right for the children and you share your thought processes, people can't really argue with it, can they? And if they do keep arguing with it, they're in the wrong school because they're just a mood hoover and they can't see the relentless positivity that's in this building, heaven forbid. And the same, what I'm saying there about your idea of doing it for your decisions, you've got to do it you've got to build a team of leaders that all do the same, because you don't want anybody else to suffer the same fate. Because in Tottington, there are key stage leaders. I don't know really what people think of those key stage leaders. They might want to bring down them. They might be all right with me, but there might be the Senko. They don't like the Senko, so I'm not going to do what the Senko says. But if you build every decision making and all leaders into articulating thought processes and sharing ideas, then there's less scope for bringing down the bosses, and there's less scope for finger pointing. And I think, making failure part of the process in that way is going to make people feel like they're wrapped in bubble wrap, which is this section, isn't it? All right, let's go back to that table. Oh, sorry, yeah, let's not. Just one thing, it's all well and good saying I want innovation and collaboration and collaborative ideas and bring me solutions, not problems. That was a big key phrase we have to keep using because people love coming to the boss and saying, well, this won't work. Yeah, all right, what are you going to do about it? You are best placed to make that decision. Don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution. However, there are two mantras with that. One, will your idea raise standards? Because ultimately we are here for excellent education. Not really talked about that this afternoon. It's a byproduct, isn't it? But your thought process has to be around raising standards. And secondly, will it make memories that could last a lifetime? Doesn't that sound twee? But I'm going to bring you back to Miss Tomlinson leaning on her Mini as she signs those books. She's dying to get home. It's the end of July. But the kids are just queuing up because they want her to make a mark in their book. And we have the opportunity here that if people are going to start innovating and taking risks because they feel comfortable, then will the risk that they're taking, could it create a memory that could last a lifetime? If you were in Simon Hunt's class, the children he's been in Tottington 5 years now, the children in older years when they've been in his class do quite a lot of this phrase. Do you remember when? And that's the phrase I want kids to use. I want them to use it the year that they've left the class. Well, I want to use it the week after a brilliant lesson. I want them to use it in a couple of years. I want them to use it when they're 41 years old and they're talking to colleagues over Zoom like I am. Do you remember when? I had an example. I took it off the slides, but I'll give it you anyway. Simon did an angles lesson, and instead of doing it in the books, this will drive some of you mad, he used whiteboard pens and let them do it on the tables instead. And some of them did it on the windows. As long as you could wipe it off, that's where they did their problem solving. They just scribbled on the windows. I mean, the lad's mad. But you know what? There are still children now. This was 4 years ago. and they'll say, oh, do you remember when we did that fractions? It was lines and degrees. Do you remember when we did that maths lesson and we were allowed to write on the windows? It's that, isn't it? I said, I don't remember the maths lessons that Mrs. Tomlinson taught me, but I remember the way she made me feel. And the more you can give these ideas that make memories that last a lifetime, the more you're going to solidify a feeling in children that primary school, high school, nursery, whichever school you run, it was a great place to be, wasn't it? That was a non-negotiable, even when we were trying to, solve problems together. Right. Some fears that I've come across. The next one, the inadequate teacher. My lessons are not good enough. They're all over the place, aren't they? Do you know what? That's a breed of the way that, I mean, hopefully I'm preaching to the converted, pushing against an open door here. Maybe your schools are different. Oh, I took an ice cube. Sorry. Can't teach with that in a day. But fear of being observed has become a byproduct of bad senior leadership decision-making, I think. My lessons are not good enough. When I used to walk in the early days and the teacher would change what they were doing because I walked in. Absolutely. No, you don't change because somebody's walked in. You do the lesson you were doing because it's brilliant. But how do you get that message across? How do you make teachers feel valued in the way that they teach so that they don't feel under threat? Because I talked about fear, didn't I? There's two elements we've done. I've done this that have proved successful. I'll share with you them very briefly. The two things I'm about to show are an afternoon's learning all on their own. So I'm not going to go into detail, and apologies if it doesn't make much sense. But performance management and how you ask your teachers to improve, we do through coaching, because it's so easy to set performance management targets. You will do this. You will do that. I want you to do that. The school improvement plan says you must do this. Right. Is that actually going to improve a teacher, or is that just a jobs list? We have a performance management process now, which is coaching led, where the areas for improvement are not put on you by leaders, because there's hierarchy and you're already instantly under threat. Somebody telling you you're not good enough in these three areas. That's not good for your mental health. That's not good for well-being. And that's not good for feeling like you're in bubble wrap. So performance management is a coaching process. It means that you have an honest discussion with your team. And that's where, it's very hard to undo it. If you've become the hierarchical leader, the matriarch or patriarch of the family, hard to undo this, but it can be done. You start having honest discussions with your teachers about what they don't think they're that good at. You don't even have to tell them. Honestly, if they can't see it, you might have a bit of a problem, but that's capability. In this coaching, in this performance management issue, teachers know that what they're not that good at. You don't need to tell them. They'll tell you if you've got an honest and open relationship. You then have coaching conversations where you think about how you could get through this process, potential causes for weaknesses in your teaching, and possible solutions, but obviously you're not going to get that early doors. This is the key part. If you're a senior leader and you do class visits, what's the purpose of those class visits? For me, for 5 years of my 10-year senior leadership career, it was checking up. I had a tick list. I wanted to see whether they were doing it, and if they weren't, they got in trouble. Well, that just creates fear, doesn't it? The fear of getting it wrong. Who wants that? Who's going to work best when you're working under those stresses? Actually, in this process, and what we do now is we've had an honest conversation, and the example here I give is greater depth boys. I've got a teacher who really struggles to get the greater depth boys motivated and achieving. So instead of me going in and observing at the back, I actually go in and I'm a teaching assistant for a maths lesson, and I will sit with those children and I will be part of the problem rather than trying to find the solution, because I ain't going to find the solution, by the way. That's not good coaching, is it? That's mentoring. I'm going to sit in that class and I'm going to see what it's like to be a greater depth mathematician, and I'm going to watch these boys and I'm going to try and help them as a teaching assistant would. But if I'm in and part of the problem, I understand what that teacher's going through. It could be external noise. It could be the table next to them. It could be something that it's nothing to do with the teacher's skill set. It's something that the teacher just can't see because they're not seeing it from the eye of a child. We then have improvement discussions, which is a coaching-led discussion where the improvements and the ideas to get something better is led by the coachee, the teacher. Then we implement the change and then we revisit it. I'm not going to go over and over again, but there's one word that you can see here, and that's ownership. Who owns the ideas for improvement? The teachers. Who owns the performance management targets? The teachers do, because we co-created them rather than forcing them upon them. You want your teachers to feel valued. You want to wrap them in bubble wrap. You've got to think about the processes like performance management that actually have become something to be feared. Because fear, just like the children, nobody learns when you're scared. It's fight or flight, isn't it? If you feel under threat, we're not being chased by tigers anymore. But we've got leaders coming in the back of our room and our response is the same. Am I going to hide or am I going to leg it? Am I going to freeze? That's the new one. All three of those are not conducive to high quality learning and moving forward. I think ownership is a big part of that. I want to show you this. I'm not going to talk it through at great length, but even in the way that we discuss what happens in a lesson, so we call it lesson study. So not all the time is a lesson observation about performance management. It might be just to see if something's been implemented, see what's going on in a lesson. But we do it non-judgmental. We talk about lesson study. We actually pull apart a lesson and let teachers reflect on what happened. I'm not going to go through it. The right-hand side is a tick box. There's certain essential elements that are non-negotiable. But that graph, you can see E and C. Two big things in one of the schools that I work in is engagement of the children and the challenge that they receive. So what we do is we actually plot it across the lesson. But the teacher does that because the teacher's in there as well. He doesn't take a senior leader to say, did you know that when you were doing the recap 20 minutes into your lesson, that the challenge of that recap dipped? They might not be able to see it. And in that way, you can just jump in as a mentor and put it on. But that graph there is an actual lesson that I watched. And what it shows is that engagement and challenge dipped when they got to the group work. But isn't it great to have a debate with a member of staff where you talk about why that might have happened and you track the lesson to find where the weaknesses and strengths are, rather than just watching it and writing on your pad at the back of the lesson and pulling them into your office and saying, right, these are the good bits, these are the bad bits, this is what you've got to do next. Feels a bit like being chased by a tiger. That feels like they just want to run away. I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time you did a feedback from a lesson observation and the teacher on the other side of the table was like, oh, that's fantastic, thank you? They don't, do they? Because actually, you know what happens. They dismiss all the positives and they focus in on the negatives because they're fearful, because they're under threat. So why don't we do this in a coaching way? I think this needs to happen fundamentally, or else you're not going to get that buy-in to get the change that schools need. My last one, and there's no extra slides on this one, is the imposter syndrome. You might get this as a leader. Honestly, I get this quite a lot in my current role as an executive head teacher. Senior leaders will get it. Teachers will get it. It's the idea that I'm not actually good enough. I don't belong where you know, the title that I've currently got. Can I do it? Should I do it? How have I got here? I'm not good enough. How can you solve that? Because it will exist. You might not see it. People hide it very well, but it will exist within your teams. Well, it's a simple one. Catch them being brilliant. You have to be hyper aware of what your teachers are doing and pick up when they do something good. And in the worst possible teacher you can ever think of, they will have traits that are fantastic and worthy of dissemination. Catch people being brilliant and tell other people that they're being brilliant, because they all built into this idea of positive mindset, the way that people view me. But your job actually as senior leader is to catch them being brilliant, because ultimately they want to please the boss, don't they? There is hierarchy. I try my best to knock down those walls. We're in it together. I'm Leonidas. I look like him as well, honestly. It's easy. I think I've done a really good job of that, but still there are members of staff who just want to please the boss. That's their job. That's what they're in it for. And you can make them feel great and wrapped in bubble wrap quite easily. Catch them being brilliant and tell them. An email at the end of the week. You might do that to the whole team. It might be to one person. Stopping someone on the corridor. Thanks for what you did yesterday. That was fantastic. Thank you. I walked past you doing a lesson the other day, and I heard how you talked to that child who was struggling. I was really emotionally intelligent. Thanks for that. That's all it takes. You can do all the star things in the world. You can have the best Christmas party and say thank you for everything that we're doing. But the ones that matter the most are the ones that are personal, heartfelt, and done in a corridor, I think. I just want you to have a quick look at that table and reflect on the teams and the schools in which you work. And are these real and hidden fears amongst your teams? Do you think they worry about the way they are perceived? Do you think they are fearful of having a bad idea because it's scorned upon? Do you think they have worries about their own inadequacies? And what's driving that? And why do people have those fears? Are we actually seen in leadership partially responsible for the way that they feel, even if they're not inadequate? If they are inadequate, by the way, get them on capability, because that's not good enough. Our children deserve better. And finally, do they suffer from imposter syndrome? Do they think they shouldn't be doing what they do? Well, if they do, then we've got a job on, haven't we, to make them feel better about that? Because if so, it impacts on everything. That whole flow chart at the start, you won't get the results you want, no matter what results you're looking for, if people don't feel valued and don't feel safe. Here's some words in my word cloud to just pull together the thinking there. And we're nearly done. The last section is a short one, you'll be happy to hear, because it's just a reflection of what we've talked about this afternoon. All right. Then, and I've put it at the back, I've put it as the final section, section 4. Then's the bit you've been waiting for. If you do one thing, what's the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference? I knew you've been waiting for this. And there isn't one, is there? Because right at the start, I told you there's no policy. There's no thing you can buy. I wish I could sell you now and say, and if you want to get the change that you're looking for, buy this, the Stephen Holden guide. I can't, because your contexts are different. Let's reflect on what we have talked about, though, because actually there may be. I told you about having a positive mindset when you come to a piece of training, and here you are sat here, bless you, you've been here for 2 hours. But you won't agree with everything that I've said, and you will not be able to take away everything. But is there a nugget? Is there something that's been mentioned this afternoon that has made you think, I want change where I am, and I wonder if this is a barrier? Let's reflect on them. How do you perceive yourself? Because remember, you're not all that. And how do other people see you? What outward signs do you use that show who you are? And what is the mirror that's being held up? How are people seeing you? Do they see you the way that you want to be seen? I told you about my core values and how I try to portray them day in, day out. What are yours, and how do you portray them? And is something else, like a car parking space, sat in the way? Is there something else, like having letters after your name on your door plate, that actually gives a sign of superiority rather than hierarchy? Do you lead from the front or do you lead from the back? If you lead from the back, you're doomed, unfortunately, because leadership is not management. You can be a great manager from a desk. You cannot be a great leader. So if you lead from the back and you think, well, I'm 35 miles behind the front line, your school is doomed. Sorry to say that. And if that's what you're doing right now, then let's change this. Let's be a Leonidas. Let's start reflecting on why we came into this and what people see and how we want our teachers to behave. Because you can't lead from the back. You have to lead from the front, because the way you behave is the way your staff will behave. And when the staff behave like that, the children will behave like that. If you're distant and hard to get hold of, then that is the expectation you're setting. And our children deserve better than that. When did you last reconnect with the staff core values? And I don't mean the school's values. That's lovely, and it should be done. Of course it should. I mean the reason why your staff came into the profession. When was the last time you reconnected with that? Sir John Jones does incredible work on this, and he uses a video, which I've not put in this today because it's not his. It's Ian Wright, the footballer, and Ian Wright meeting his teacher, Sid Pigden. If you've not seen that clip, I implore you to get onto YouTube as soon as I finished and type in Mr. Pigden, Ian Wright. Ian Wright, the hard man of football, is in tears when he sees his teacher. Because this type of message, show your staff that video. I did. I had them all in tears. Because it reminds me of why we came into this profession. And if they've lost that, they need to go. Loads of jobs at Tesco. If you've lost the reason why we do this job, you've got to be mad to work in education. You've got to be making a difference. And if you're not, off you go. You might as well stack shelves, because these are children's lives we're talking about. But if you don't revisit this with your staff, they're going to get stale. They're going to lose the reason why they did this in the first place. Do your staff make positive choices about what they see? There's something called a negative cyclone, where something, once you talk about something and it's talked about again, it becomes a negative cyclone and you can't get out of a negative conversation. but that cyclone can work in the other way. So what do you put value on, and what do your staff talk in corners? Is there a negative feel in the staff room? Because if so, you have to challenge it yourself and get your staff to challenge each other with it. If someone's moaning, then challenge what they're moaning about. Are you going to change that? Because if not, I don't want to hear it. You're wasting everybody's time. Oh, what a lovely one. Will you be remembered when our children grow older? Will you be remembered? I've talked about leaders. It doesn't have to be about children remembering us. I want teachers to be retiring and remembering me as a leader from a school that they worked in when they were an NQT or whatever. I'd love that. And that matters. I want to be leaning on my mini and writing in books and people see the smile on my face. Have we got that in our school? Do staff realise the power that they have to influence and be a positive role model for children? I hope so. Looking at you now, right down the camera. Are you the you that you want to be every day? You know what your core values are. You know that you want to be brilliant. Do you do it every day? Why not? Because your staff deserve nothing less. That's why we're in it, isn't it? Because if you don't value it, they won't. And if they won't, the kids won't. And then we are in a pickle. Is relentless positivity a non-negotiable? Personal bugbear, said it 3,000 times. We're a serious school with serious standards. Yeah, well, you won't get seriously good standards. You won't. Because actually, you don't have to be out there and wacky. You don't have to do the worm dance move across your playground or do carpool karaoke. I'm not saying you have to do that. But positivity, well-being, these are non-negotiables. How can you have a school where fear is reigned, where the staff are scared of the leader, where the children are scared of the teachers? Be honest with yourselves. Do you have a class where you know the children are scared of that teacher? Get in there and get it sorted, because those children are not learning. They are compliant, yes. They sit still, yes. But they work through fear. That's not a school that you should be a leader of. Positivity is a non-negotiable. What have you taken from today? Have you taken the fact that failure is part of your process? Is it? Are people allowed to fail? Are ideas shared collectively, and when they don't work, we hold our hands up? Do you lead failure from the top? Are you honest when I wrote that letter? That didn't land very well, did it? I think I got the wording wrong. You're not perfect. You're not all that. And finally, how often do you catch your staff being brilliant? If that's just your takeaway today, it will change the mood of your school. If you promise yourself that once a day you're going to catch somebody being brilliant, and you've got to be out there, so you can't be Sergeant Melchett, you can't be 35 miles away, you've got to be in the building. You promise yourself one a day, one a week even, to just find a member of staff and say, thanks for that. That's all it takes. And actually do it in person if you can. If you're in the buildings, if you're still working remotely, an email will do. But it's so much better when you can feel the emotion in someone's voice. These are the opportunities that I think we've discussed this afternoon that you could take away and reflect upon. If you're doing all of these, brilliant. Please email me, because I'm going to give you my email at the end. Email me. Let's have a chat about how brilliant it is to be in education. If you're not doing all these, then let's get it sorted, because our children and staff deserve nothing less. But if you're going to change one thing today, if you're going to do one thing out of everything that I've said, I have got one for you. It was worth waiting 2 hours for, because I have got a golden nugget, and it's this. Be that guy. Yeah? I don't mean grab yourself while you're dancing in a field. I mean dance the dance that you know is right. Get out there and be the person that you want to be. I mean, say be the change that you want. Get out there. If you know that you're way off everything I've talked about today, get back to core values. Start reconnecting with your staff. Start understanding what you want your school to achieve. But you can only do that by being this guy. Dance that dance and do it regardless of whether people think it's silly, whether you think people are not going to get on board with you, because you will get the next person. Just like David said, you'll get the group of people, you'll get the early adopters, and soon people will be running down the hills to be part of what you're leading. And that's what we need in education. The final cloud looks like this. And the eagle-eyed amongst you didn't take much, really, did it? We'll realise that these are not just words that have been flashing up to represent each section. The word clouds create words as well. Who's been really clever and taken in each word at the end of every section? If you've not, I've done it for you, because the punchline of everything is this. It's all about you. No matter, you are the only one that you can control. You are the only one that can make changes, whether you are the head teacher, senior leader, principal, just a teacher, just a teaching assistant. It doesn't matter. It's all about you, because only you can change it. But if you are in a position of power, and that's why you're here today, it's even more important because the stakes are higher, because you've got staff and children's lives in your building, and they deserve nothing but the best. We've done it. Thank you so much for listening this afternoon. I'm going to hand back over to David. I've got some links on the right-hand side there. I realise my email's not on there, and I'll stick it in the chat when I come off sharing, because if you're still here, I don't even know if you have, I had to move your faces. If you're still here, I'm going to put my email in the chat so that we can have a chat, or if you've got any questions or you want to connect on any level to spread this positivity word, then just give me a shout via email. If not, thank you so much for this afternoon.